Okay, everybody's on notice. Okay, we're gonna start with Michelle Edward. Well, let's do this first. Before I share my screen. Well, that's interesting. Let me do this. Okay, what I would like to do is introduce Michelle Edwards with Rappahannock Rapidan Regional Commission, and turn it over to her. She's going to introduce Louis Keddell with the Chesapeake Conservancy. Michelle?
Yes. Hello, Michelle Edwards. I'm the Environmental Programs Manager for the Rappahannock Rapidan Regional Commission, and we're going to be talking today about our BMP Prioritization Tool, which is part of a larger National Fish and Wildlife Small Watershed Grant project. And the reason we have, and Eldon, I just want to make sure we're not going through the list of everybody. You want me to launch into the presentation?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay.
We've got a lot of ground to cover today.
Okay.
And, that's why I've asked everybody to identify themselves and who they represent in their namespace, and so see for themselves.
All right, you just caught me by surprise a little. Okay.
I know, it was not my normal approach.
So the reason why we decided to launch into this project is during the Chesapeake Bay Watershed Implementation Plan Phase 3 process that we oversaw for the region. Stakeholders found a lack of comprehensive GIS data to help spatially plan where best management practices should be put on the landscape. We didn't have a good sense of how many BMPs, there was gaps in the data, there was data that some folks had and others didn't, there was data at the feds and the state that not all of the stakeholders had, and they had data that other people didn't have. So we really needed to try to pull that together. So that was how we launched into this effort, also to implement the WIP3, focusing on stormwater management. When this has been done over a 3-year process, it was supposed to be 2 years. We ended up having to get an extension because of some of the fallout from the pandemic, with trouble being able to get bids. So the project will close in March of 2024. The overall project, our partners are Culpeper County, Town of Warrenton, John Marshall Soil and Water Conservation District, Friends of the Rappahannock, and the Chesapeake Conservancy, you'll hear from in a little bit. And the overall grant project award was about $300K, and we had a little over that in our match. But the tool development was a much smaller part of that. Most of the funds went to the BMP construction, as you might imagine. So yes, the tool development was just $30,000. Slide.
Oops, there you go.
Thank you. So as far as the project components of this, we are installing, and I apologize, we are installing 4 green stormwater BMPs in Warrenton and Culpeper County. It was supposed to be Fauquier County rather than Culpeper, but they weren't able to get bids after the pandemic. So in Warrenton, there's a bioswale near the dog park in Garrett Street, and a constructed wetland on the on 5th Street, and then 2 in Culpeper County at the Carver Center, a permeable pavement and a bioswale that will be going in over the next 6 months. And then also another part of the project is to improve participation in John Marshall Soil and Water Conservation District's VCAP program, with increased outreach and cost share matching funds for 5 BMP projects. This is something that Friends of the Rappahannock is also providing assistance with on the outreach side. Oh, slide. And you can see these are the, I should say those 2 photos were from the town of Warrenton's best management practices, the constructed wetland and the bioswale that went in over the summer. The other project components are the effort that we are leading, that we are concluding the GIS-based watershed management plan. We've gathered and are mapping partner data from localities and state and federal sources. These are existing data sources. Friends of the Rappahannock has also assisted by digitizing some stream bank exclusion fencing on the ag side. And we've also secured data sharing MOUs for this data. And this data, I should point out, is for conservation partners, not for the general public. So that was a key part of our data sharing MOUs, that this would not just be available to the general public. So the intent there is to be able to fill that gap with data sharing amongst our partners for BMPs to be able to go in the ground. And then the BMP prioritization tool with the Chesapeake Conservancy will be talking to you about in a little bit, with the GIS-based prioritization of both ag and urban BMPs for the region that Louis has been working with RRRC's Land Use and Environment Committee to develop with input from them. And it will be a web tool for local regional site planning by our conservation partners. And then Friends of the Rappahannock, as I mentioned, has been providing technical assistance for this effort. One of their primary roles was ground truthing stream bank data for this effort. So that's about it. And they've also been helping with BMP design as well. So I think is that the last slide, Eldon? Oh, one more. So this is an example from our watershed plan GIS tool that RRC is developing. John Otto, I think, is on the line if you have any questions about that, but yes. So this is kind of to give you a sense of what that will look like. So Louis has been doing a wonderful job developing our BMP prioritization tool. He's with the Chesapeake Conservancy, and I will turn it over to him. Thank you, Louis.
Thanks, Michelle. So yeah, Louis Keddell, Geospatial Program Manager with the Chesapeake Conservancy, and I'll be sharing a little bit about the BMP Opportunity Tool that we've been developing. Let me see if I can share my screen here. Okay. Can you guys see the slide?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So yeah, as Michelle was mentioning, we've been developing a tool just to help with planning across the 6 county region. In terms of you, I'll just give kind of a brief, recap of project. Working with the Land Use and Environment Committee, we identified a series of stormwater and agricultural BMPs that we could potentially map broad opportunity areas for across the region. And I'll be going through those in a bit, in addition to just general methodology that we implemented for each of these practices. And then we'll talk about some of the prioritization criteria broadly that we've been considering for this project. And then we'll wrap up with a demo of the actual web tool at the end. So to just go over, what we've been working on through this project. So after narrowing down the list of BMPs, we looked at local design specifications from Virginia DEQ, some of the scientific literature, and then open source data sets, such as slopes, soil, high resolution land cover, land use, streams, and more, in order to identify those areas that would be potentially suitable for each of these practices in the region. After putting these different workflows into place, we had these broad BMP opportunity areas that were output. And then once we had those opportunity areas, we've been looking at potentially prioritizing which opportunity areas might be of greater interest to look at when looking at BMP implementation. But even with that, I do want to stress that the data, just inherently has some limitations. Some of the input data sets might have their own sources of error. There are certain assumptions that need to be made when mapping opportunities over such a large region. And so, this resource is great for looking at just broadly what the universe of possibility is across the 6-county region, but definitely there is an on-the-ground component that is needed to verify whether an opportunity area is appropriate before actually moving forward with implementation. So first, we'll take a look at our green infrastructure stormwater practices that we identified. The first we agreed was feasible for this project was looking at permeable pavement. With this, essentially what we did was look at the 1 meter land cover and land use data from the Chesapeake Bay Program Partnership. Using this data, we filtered for impervious land cover. And then we also included land cover underneath tree canopy. And then we excluded structures and roads as not suitable for this practice. And then because these data sets do contain some error, especially with some of the smaller pixel noise issues, we did apply a small filter to remove what we call noise in the data. We also looked at urban tree planting. With this, we utilized again the land cover and land use data, filtered to include only turf land use, removed areas within the riparian zone or 100 feet of streams, and then again also applied a noise filter. Similar to the tree planting, we also looked at urban forest planting, and essentially this took it one step further in removing areas that were less than an acre in size, because with this BMP you need those contiguous blocks to get credit for that practice. We also looked at bioretention in a rough sense, utilizing land cover land use and digital elevation slope data. We filtered to only herbaceous and barren land cover types across the region, filtered that output for areas with slope up to 5%, and then removed areas within the 100-year floodplain. For rain gardens, somewhat similar to the bioretention siting methodology. Again, all the same steps. Previously, we had included a constraint to only identify areas with hydrologic soil group A. However, in a previous committee meeting, we did receive feedback that this limited the opportunity areas a little too severely across the region. So we removed that constraint, and we now have more coverage across the 6-county area. The reason we were initially looking at removing soil group A was given that undergrains are typically required for the other soil groups, but that's not necessarily something that would prevent us from mapping those additional opportunity areas. And again, when looking at these opportunity areas, we're not saying that, you know, a whole contiguous polygon would be recommended for a rain garden. It's anywhere within that area meets these general suitability guidelines. Same thing with bioswales. You know, we looked at herbaceous and barren land cover types, excluded all agriculture, and then filtered to areas with slope up to 5%. We also looked at urban wetlands. With this data set, you know, again, similar approach with herbaceous and land cover types, no agriculture classes. But we also had additional considerations, removing areas within 20 meters of structures, and then only keeping those areas that have a contributing drainage of greater than 12 acres, according to some of the specifications that we read in the literature. Wet ponds, somewhat similar, also an approach. However, with this one, we did filter to hydrologic soil groups C and D, or C and D only. And I believe all the other specifications were the same as the wetlands. We also looked at dry detention ponds. Again, many of the same criteria. There were a few extra ones with this practice. We removed all areas within 50 feet of slopes steeper than 15%. Also, all areas that were within 100 feet of karst, trout streams, wetlands, 100-year floodplains, and perennial streams. And then also just noting that a minimum area of 10 acres was recommended by EPA. And that when citing this practice, potentially large amounts of space are required. So those were the stormwater practices. We'll just go real quick through the ag practices. The Conservancy has been working with the Bay program to map opportunity areas for ag practices. And so we were kind of, you know, seeking to pull in this adjacent effort to benefit this project. And these are some of the NRCS practices that are being mapped as a part of that other initiative. And I won't go through all the specifications here, but we have about 8 practices or so that we'll be including in this project from that effort. And then we also identified 2 more ag practices that we could add in addition to those. And one was land retirement to ag open space or pasture. With this, we utilized the land use data to identify, you know, the suitable ag lands, and then applied a soil erodibility factor to help indicate, you know, perhaps which areas would be more desirable for land retirement. And then similarly for agricultural tree planting, you know, really visualizing the soil erodibility factor, you know, to help with planning and, you know, potentially conversations with the landowner as well, who may not necessarily want to take all of their land out of production. So, you know, we had some conversations with the Land Use and Environment Committee looking at different prioritization criteria. We aren't necessarily going very in depth with this prioritization approach. I think, you know, because we're just looking very broadly across the region, there were a couple ideas in terms of criteria that were discussed. You know, we were looking at proxies to indicate potential areas that might be of interest or of focus. We looked at, you know, drainage for percentage agricultural land use within the HUC 12 watershed, where certain practices might lie, you know, as an indication of potential runoff pollution based on the composition of that watershed within which that practice area lies, looking at the soil erodibility factor, and then also looking at HUC 12 watershed areas and USGS catchment watersheds containing 303D impaired waterways that might see water quality benefits if a practice were to be implemented upstream. And then for stormwater as well, you know, looking at the percent impervious and turf land use composition within the HUC 12 watershed or catchment within which a practice opportunity area might fall. Again, just, you know, there are some assumptions being made here, but just indicating a proxy in terms of, you know, certain areas having certain types of land use would be assumed to be more polluting than, say, you know, a completely forested or natural composition watershed. And then again, also looking at 303D impaired waterways, how upstream practices might improve water quality. And then we also looked at, you know, catchment watersheds that currently contained no stormwater BMPs, and potentially looking at those as opportunities for additional implementation. All right, I guess with that, we'll just jump over to the web application here. So in the web application, you know, we've included not only the BMP opportunity layers, but also a number of reference layers just to help, you know, compare data sets, visualize different contextual information. So in yellow here, we've got the county boundaries for the commission geography. You know, we've also included NHD catchment watersheds, NHD HUC 12 watersheds. You can turn some of these on. You can turn these on and off using the layer list on the right. We also have parcel data for all of the counties in the region, I believe, except for the Rappahannock County. I don't think they have publicly available parcel data. And then we have also included the water sewer service areas for Culpeper and Fauquier, and also the Fauquier MS4 urbanized areas. And thanks, John Otto, for passing that data to us. Heading down to this grouping for stormwater practices. Let's see if we can turn on the urban tree planting. It's a little hard to see when you're zoomed out, but as you zoom in, you can start to see the general opportunity areas that were mapped. And just to recap, this is looking at areas of opportunity outside of ag lands. And so many of the open spaces within the 6-county region are agricultural. So it's everything that would fall outside of that. So generally in the more developed land use areas, you'll see this, these BMP opportunities. Turn on another one here, the forest planting. And so you'll start to see some interesting patterns develop. You know, I did want to include caveats about, you know, errors that come from the land cover land use data. Like you can see here, this baseball diamond is being counted as a forest planting opportunity, but we know that that's probably not feasible. Sports fields are a known issue in the land use that, you know, the partnership is trying to work on. But again, you know, just kind of keeping in mind that this data shows general areas of opportunity, but it should be taken with a grain of salt and definitely verified with expert opinion. Let's take a look at the urban riparian buffers here. So the riparian buffer opportunities was looking at the riparian zone along streams and only highlights those areas that are not currently covered by tree canopy. See if we can keep zooming out. And so generally you can see certain corridors that have space available for tree planting. And I do also want to point out here that, you know, in some instances, there are some limitations with the hydrography data that this is based on, where it might have cited in an area that doesn't quite make sense. Like looking at this, this must be like a quarry or like some kind of pit area. But generally for vegetated open space, this output is fairly reliable. Let's see. I don't know if I'll necessarily open every single one of these practices, but if anyone is interested in any of them, feel free to jump in. Maybe we can take a look at the rain garden practice here. And again, you know, with like the practices like rain garden, it was any area that made it through the series of rules and filters that we applied. And whatever was left over is what we're seeing on the screen here. In addition to the stormwater, you know, so we do have agricultural practices. And again, these are opportunity areas. We're looking at land retirement opportunity. This is symbolized by the soil erodibility factor. Darker colors being more erodible, lighter colors being less erodible. Can zoom out a little. And so by getting this broad view across the whole region, you know, we can start to get a sense of what is the total universe of possibility for this specific practice. And then from there, it's just, you know, narrowing down based on planning purposes and whatnot. So yeah, that's a sense of the ag practices. We can probably click on, maybe we can look at the contour buffer strips. And these are based on specifications that I'm not going to go into on this call, but if anyone had any questions on them, I'm happy to get them those details. And then we did include some reference layers. You know, the commission did provide some existing stormwater BMP locations within the geography. I do want to mention that, you know, with this project, we didn't map existing BMP locations. We were mapping opportunity areas. And so these blue dots are locations of existing stormwater BMPs. And I believe if you click on this menu button, there's an option to open the attribute table for this layer if you wanted to look at details of these different practices. And you can also use this select widget, say if you wanted to highlight a specific practice within the table. Let's see, show select. If you hit the options, selected layers, you could look at the record for that specific location and BMP. Okay. We've also included a stream layer, trout waters from Virginia DEQ. I believe they're located mostly to the west along the mountain range. 303D impaired waters. We also have the soil group data for the region. 100-year floodplain extent. Karst regions shown in this like brown color. And then we've also included, slope information and then some demographic indices, potentially to help with some grant applications. And then we have also included the BAPE program partnership, high resolution land cover, and land use data sets. And we did also more recently include a topographic map. If you zoom in, it also gives you contour information, if that is of interest to some folks. So essentially, those are the resources that we currently have in this tool. It's really to help facilitate visualization of this data, comparing and contrasting different data sets. We do have an add data widget if you have your own GIS data that you want to upload into the app for comparison. This is only a temporary add, so if you close out of this window, the data won't still be there if you come back to this link. And yeah, that's pretty much the presentation, I guess. Does anyone have any questions?
Questions for Louis or Michelle? None.
I got one.
Go ahead, Harrison.
Sure.
I literally just put this in the chat, so I'm just gonna reread what I wrote in the chat. But if I already missed this, I do apologize. But when does this go live? And if it's already live, could someone plop the link in the chat?
So I guess I can speak first, and I don't know, Michelle, if you want to say anything after, but this isn't completely live yet because it has been a work in progress. We're still refining a lot of the data sets and feedback with the Land Use and Environment Committee, but we are nearly there. And Michelle, I don't know if you had a more official date that you were aiming for, but
No, I mean, I've just been, waiting for Louis to, or the Conservancy to finalize the data before we announce it. Our Land Use and Environment Committee hasn't seen this draft either. The last time I think we had a presentation was, I want to say, May. So just be patient with us, I guess, until we're finished. But this is a pretty final version. We're just putting the finishing touches on it at this point.
Awesome. Thank you all so much. This is amazing. Cannot wait to see it.
Norm, it looks like you got your hand up.
Yes, sir. Louis, Michelle, great job. I was a little leery when I saw the agenda and the title, and it was like, oh God, here we go again. I've had so many issues with some of the prioritization work that the program has done over the years, and I like this. It's great that you guys kept it general. It's just showing opportunities, and you're not trying to pigeonhole a certain BMP into a certain land parcel, et cetera, like some of the other works that the Bay program has put out there. So I just wanted to say I really like it, and it'd be really nice if we start talking to the program about expanding this into some of the other watersheds.
Yeah, that's really great to hear. And I appreciate hearing that perspective from the Bay program side, because, you know, that's something especially the Conservancy tries to be careful of when we take on projects like this, is anytime we prioritize something or map opportunities for BMPs, we're not trying to say, oh, you need to do this here, or all these opportunity areas need BMPs. We're not trying to scare landowners away. It's more just to help with planning efforts, just seeing the universe of opportunity. And again, the data isn't perfect either. There are errors here. It has to be vetted on the ground with expert opinion, and you have to have a willing landowner. So
Yeah, no, I agree. The one of the issues that we've been trying to beat the Bay program over the head with, especially for Virginia, is that local government, for the most part, has very little say in terms of what BMP is going to go in on, especially new development. And about the only opportunity that local government has with respect to choices of BMPs or location of BMPs is when they're doing their own retrofits. Other than that, we're at the whim of a developer in terms of what they want to put in and where they want to put it. And I just can't get that concept across to EPA or the Bay program.
Yeah, I mean, this is strictly for planning. It very much helps our conservation partners and like Piedmont Environmental Council and Friends of the Rappahannock and the Soil and Water Conservation Districts and local governments as we're putting together regional grant efforts for to determine, what and how much we might go after in a grant and try to target areas of the region to focus on, or, even if PEC or Friends of the Rappahannock is going out to the site to work with a landowner on a large parcel to be able to show what the opportunities may be, but this isn't prescriptive.
Right.
Yeah, one layer I might suggest that you might want to add would be an EIJ layer, simply because there's a lot of money being focused in on some of those areas right now.
You mean
And
the EJ screen ones that he has?
Yeah, I've got a couple here.
Oh, okay, there you go. Yep. Okay, great. Thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great to include those. Thanks, Norm.
Other questions before I ask mine? Okay. And this is a question to everybody. This will be reprised at a higher level next week for the River Basin Commission. And I want to ask the group if what are the key points that Louis and Michelle should relay to the elected officials? What's going to be valuable for them to hear in this presentation? Okay.
Maybe what was just said earlier by Akrat, who said about how it shows the general opportunity areas, not going into specific, has to be this BMP on this parcel kind of thing. Whoever had said that, I think it was Norm, I do believe. And I think he was really spot on with that, and that could be a really good selling point for when talking to the elected officials.
Great. Thank you, Harrison.
I would add also, as Michelle said, it's non-prescriptive. It's basically showing opportunities. That's the main thing.
Yeah, it's a planning tool, right?
Maybe one other thing, at least what I'm thinking of how our county could possibly use it, is this could be used by localities for incentivizing certain things regarding, like, say, rezonings or conditional uses and whatnot, instead of being a regulatory, you have to because you're in an opportunity zone. Just like, it's another tool to incentivize and make local incentives be reactionary to actual data instead of what people think would work here or there and whatnot.
Good. Thank you. Any other bits of wisdom for our pair that get to go up in front of the commission next week? All right, I'm going to say thank you to both of you. This is I see this as a great planning tool, and it's a good opportunity to put information out to people who have to make decisions. What well, if we're gonna put something somewhere, here's where this practice should go, and that's better information than we've got today. Let's put it that way. Okay, with that, any final words, Louis or Michelle?
No, just, want to thank Michelle and everyone for the opportunity to participate, and excited to see where this goes.
Yes, I mean, it was a wonderful process, and the Conservancy was great to work with, and we're really happy with the way this is shaping up. And I think this will be really valuable for us because, yes, as a more rural region, we don't have hugely robust data sets like a Northern Virginia or Hampton Roads might, because of their local governments just having so much data. So this was incredibly helpful for us as we move forward as a region. So yes, we're happy with this. And I mean, I know with the infrastructure money, certainly that the state and federal government has been, the environmental agencies like DEQ have been really pushing, just put BMPs on the ground, just put BMPs on the ground. But we're trying to take a more, I guess, intelligent response as to where these things may go. So we're planning to put these in the best areas possible. And really, it also, I think, as we've done past grant projects, it kind of helps start the conversations. We've been in the situation so many times where there may be 10 organizations sitting around a table saying, what should we do? And we would sit there for, at least a couple of meetings, just what should we do and what BMPs should we do and what should we put into this grant? And this really helps get that conversation started. It's not the end result, but it is part of the process.
Thank you, Michelle. And let's see, I'm going to transition us over to our second presentation. Sara, sorry, I had neglected to send you the link until after we got this started. I'm glad you made it in.
I'm glad there were ways to correct that.
What we're going to do now is kind of drop back to our solar discussion of much of the previous 18 months. And Sara Hollberg has been participating in our technical committee discussions over that period of time, and simultaneously working for the local governments in the Shenandoah Valley to put together a report that, in my opinion, blends nicely with what this committee produced for the commission. And with that, that's my introduction, Sara, and I'm going to turn it over to you. Do you need to share your screen?
No, I
Okay.
don't have any.
Okay, no,
It was
fine.
written words. I don't think you all need to see that, but thank you. And I have been working for the Alliance for the Shenandoah Valley as a land use consultant. So I haven't been working directly with the localities, but they work directly with the localities, and I've just been sort of helping with research in solar because it is so complex, with the goal of helping the localities prepare for the applications that they get. And for those of you who don't know, the Alliance for the Shenandoah Valley serves 6 counties in the Shenandoah Valley, and that includes 4 of the top 5 agricultural counties. And it's also a beautiful area with rolling hills and mountains and national forests and other visually things that are important to the economic development of the region. But solar became a big topic in 2019, and that's when I started helping them. And we hosted workshops at that time with the PDCs and brought in speakers to help the localities understand a little bit about the need for ordinances and that sort of thing. So we did at that time put some recommendations up on the website. And what I'm actually doing now is updating those recommendations. And so I realized then how much has changed since 2019, and it's increasingly complicated. So we're just trying to keep up with that and keep everyone aware of what's involved when utility solar is a land use, and to respond appropriately, to know what questions to ask, what to expect, what to do in order to encourage the best siting and design. And our focus has been on protecting agricultural and natural and cultural resources as we move to renewable energy. And it's pretty dense document, but it does try to summarize and provide a structure. The sections are things like solar basics, what to expect, and then what the main points are: how distinctive utility scale is as a land use, and follows with recommending that localities have at least try to do 4 tools, and that includes guidance in the comp plan, an ordinance, specific supplemental policies, and policies for taxation and fiscal decisions. So this ends up being comprehensive, not a lot of detail, but giving examples and sort of providing a structure of these are the considerations. And because utility solar keeps getting more and more complicated, there are more and more considerations. So we did kind of, again, focus on a few key areas, like the need to address soil and water protection, especially things like stormwater, and also the importance of having policy, doing something with the comp plan. So like a lot of localities, they've maybe done an ordinance, but may need to go back and realize there is more to address. There are also several pages of resources at the end, and that includes citing some ways that localities have addressed particular issues. So basically, I hope that this is helpful to people. It is more of laying out the considerations and providing a structure that's fairly comprehensive. And again, we're focusing on protecting ag and natural and cultural resources, but also as localities, how to protect themselves, the staff capacity, performance bonds, that sort of thing, just as a checklist. The status is it's just been added to the Alliance website. And one further point is that we're hoping to follow this up with a webinar that would be offered to bring in some speakers and hit a few of the areas more specifically. And Eldon knows about that because he's going to help with that. So that I don't know exactly what to say, except it is out there. And I very much appreciate this forum. I've really enjoyed and learned from all the speakers and from the way the River Basin Commission operates. It's all been very helpful. So that's all I have to say at this point.
Okay, and you said the report is now posted on the Alliance's website?
Right. Yes.
What page is that on? I just flipped to your homepage.
Oh, okay. I can paste it in there, but look under regional, our work, I think it is.
Our work, got it.
Right, and regional issues. So solar has been an issue that they have continued to kind update with news.
Okay, got
And then
it.
there's a link in there to download recommendations.
Very good. I encourage anybody on here to take a look at that. It's an easy read. And like I say, it's complementary to the work that we produced. With that, questions for Sara? Solar discussion by this group and no questions.
If I could just reiterate that I'd love the link in the chat, that'd be great. I'd love to read it.
Do you want me to do that, Eldon, or did
That'd
you
be
just get there?
great. Thank you, Sara.
Okay, let me see if I can, let's see. I had not opened the chat myself. Let me see.
Luke, did you have a question?
Did that go out?
I did not. I was just popping on to show up. I actually haven't gotten a chance to read the entire report.
Yes, yeah, it's in the chat, Sara. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
And if you all have any responses and comments and additional information, please, we're all, I think, across the state. I think that's one of the best things has been seeing that you all are doing this also as a rural area. And like the previous presentation, it helps to coordinate.
Okay.
So feedback, if you do have any feedback, and clarifications, that'd be much appreciated.
I mean, I think just one of the most important things is just to have an ordinance and just to mention solar in your comprehensive plan. That alone is will set the stage for having some kind of measured response to a huge land use.
Right, and unfortunately, it keeps getting. It's not over when you've done something 4 years ago.
Oh man, no, this is
Right, and
this is
that's,
so
I think,
dynamic.
Yeah.
That or the River Basin chairman said that when we had at the last meeting, he said we're going to keep our report as a final draft because things keep changing. So I think he said that well. Hey Luke, you talked about it ought to just be in or mentioned in the comp plan. Are there some jurisdictions who've done a particularly good job of amending their comp plan to deal with the issue?
So my colleagues, Michael Zahner and Linz Edwards, who we're going to speak with later this afternoon, Eldon,
Okay.
they've got the skinny on that.
Okay.
I hop in for policy stuff and as a pinch hitter for certain solar, 2232 reviews and such, but they handle the day-to-day things for the most part. But I know that they do have a couple that they're going to recommend that you look at.
Okay. All right. So I was jumping.
I'll just speak for my localities, but I know Stafford had a really robust process for developing their solar ordinances. And their final draft has been evolving as it's ever evolving process of what the final ordinance is going to look like. And it has yet to be fully adopted, I believe, unless that changed in the last month or so. But yeah, they had a really robust process. They were worried about a lot of the things that don't get talked about. One of the things that they really were concerned about was the flame retardants, that should there be, and the PFAS that we now know comes from flame retardants, should there be a fire at one of the lithium batteries, and then how to treat a battery fire or one of those things. And so it became a conversation that evolved from there. I think they got some expert opinion that said, we just let it burn and it becomes inert. but then they were curious of, is it actually inert? Is it going into our waterways? You know, all that kind of stuff. So that's been really interesting. I also wanted to say, just commend the commission and the Alliance for their work on all this, because I went to the National Planning Conference this past year, and we did a solar at scale deep dive, and they only talked about the positives of solar. No one brought up, of all the solar sessions I sat in, no one brought up stormwater, not once. And I was astounded that no other state, that was represented at the National Planning Conference was actually talking about stormwater as an issue from solar development and any of the like negatives that come from stormwater or from solar development at all. So that was astounding to me, but I applaud the commission for kind of being on the forefront, and the Alliance for being on the forefront of this, and really taking a deep look.
And I want to echo Meredith, what you said is this has been a very balanced look, and we all appreciate that. As far as my localities, I think Harrison, you can chime in, but Culpeper County's process has been also really robust and something to look at. I don't know if
I did.
Yeah, I can drop that in. I can drop our comp plan chapter on land use in the chat if wanted. If that's where we talk about solar. We have we mentioned our comp plan. We have a specific policy and an ordinance. So we have 3 separate things. It's fun.
Yeah, Sam McLaren and his crew, including Harrison, have done a really good job with their solar policies. And
well, thank you. We appreciate the sentiment.
Caroline County's policies were excellent. They did repeal them, awaiting further direction from the state's committee that has been meeting, it seems like, but I think no consensus was reached. So
is that the 206 group?
Yes, sir. I do believe so.
Yeah, well, they were given a tough assignment. It's interesting that the Caroline ordinance was held up multiple times as an example during our process, and then before we got even to the point of writing, it had been repealed. We look to Stafford and Culpeper now based on the recommendations here, but Luke and his colleagues and I are having a discussion a little more deeply later this afternoon on a very, very topic. Okay, other comments, observations?
I do think utility scale solar is going to be deeply linked to other land uses that are beginning to come into our watershed. Otherwise known as
data centers.
Yeah, I guess that's something that I've been talking about a little bit these days.
You're not the only one.
I know. And it's coming effects on water supply planning. So I know that's going to be addressed later this year. So I appreciate you putting that on the December meeting.
And I expect there's going to be at least one commission member and maybe more that are going to approach that topic next week.
Excellent. Unfortunately, I cannot be there, but we will have someone from FOR there.
Okay. Yeah, you definitely want you'll definitely want to have somebody listening, online if nothing else. Tommy, you had a question.
Yes, I just more. It was a comment. The work that we were able to do on the solar plan and particularly the solar revenue impacts has transitioned into a Commissioners of the Revenue Association creating a solar ad hoc committee. And we have presented a 2-hour presentation to the Commissioners of the Revenue in a webinar. We presented at a local level for the Central District out in Powhatan. We're presenting a solar presentation on revenue impact at the Commissioners of the Revenue Association meeting next week in Harrisonburg.
Excellent.
And we've been invited to present to the Virginia Bar Association tax meeting later in October. So we're staying pretty active with those, with the solar revenue impacts in Virginia.
That's good. Hey,
So
Tommy,
just wanted to let you know that.
no, I appreciate that. And it causes me to ask you this question. You said that one of those presentations was 2 hours?
Yeah, we had a pretty detailed presentation back in June, and then we shortened it to about a 1 hour for the Virginia Bar Association and maybe 30 minutes at our conference. We can expand it or contract it as necessary.
Would all right, I'm gonna change hats here. Would you be interested in doing something similar for the planners? American Planning Association Virginia chapter does a monthly webinar, and it's lunchtime on a Monday, fourth Monday of the month, and that if about a 45-minute presentation with some Q&A time would be about 15 minutes of Q&A time would be fantastic if you're up for that.
Sure, we'll take this on the road anywhere.
Well, you don't have to go very far. It's all going to be virtual webinar, and it'll be recorded and posted
Okay.
onto the chapter's YouTube site so that anybody can see it at any time. All right,
I'll be around for the next 3 months before I retire, but I've got a couple of colleagues. The work will continue whether I'm part of it or not.
Okay.
I intend to be a part of it even after I retire.
Okay, good.
Elton, I have a question for Tom.
Sure.
Yeah, this is Ken. I'm from Fauquier County. I'm wondering when they give this presentation for the commissioners of revenue and stuff, do they recommend a max sort of percentage of what the operating budget that one should get, I guess, from data centers? In other words, what I'm saying is, if you put all your eggs in one basket and you're relying so much on your data centers, and then there's a blip either with the change in what happens down in Richmond or the technology changes, it would be sort of like in your retirement if you only had one stock, invested in it. And so do they say, well, you should have no more than maybe 20% or 30% of your revenue coming in from data centers?
Ken, the presentation that Tommy's talking about is on solar.
Okay. I thought he was doing on data centers for that.
No.
Okay. Sorry about that.
No, we have not looked at data centers yet. I guarantee it will be on our agenda in the near future.
Okay, thank you. Sorry.
As the commissioners of the revenue, we feel like we have a responsibility to our localities when it comes to the generation of revenue. It may not all be tax revenue, but we feel like we can contribute. And certainly in the area of solar, we look at everything from how the real estate, the actual land is taxed. We looked at M&T exemptions and the multitude of rules and regulations that have been passed by the General Assembly in the last 8 years. And we just try to track those for our colleagues so that they know what they are. We look at, the impact of revenue sharing, even though that's not a tax. And we look at the impact of siting agreements. And those things are not normally handled in commissioners of the revenue, but we try to keep our colleagues abreast of those kinds of things. And lastly, we've recently added a piece on agrivoltaics, just because that's interesting. There's a lot still going on with solar. It will be it'll be a player for many years to come.
I think that's a fair assessment. Other Hey, Tommy, Sara is looking for how to get in touch with you. I can connect you to Sara after this. With that, any other observations, comments? Thanks again to Michelle, and looks like Louis dropped off. Very much that I'm looking forward to next week. I think you got a few suggestions on how to get it at the right high level for the elected officials, so that they don't feel like they're too far down in the weeds. But some very important information they need to hear. Sara, thank you very much. Appreciate it. And we will be together October 25th, doing whatever the next topic is. I have a feeling this technical, based on some conversations I've had recently with some commission members, I expect the commission to give this technical committee an assignment next week. And we're kind of hitting around it. Brent was being a little prescient in his comments. I think we're going to be asked to take some water supply look, and the commission will be hearing from the new manager of the water supply office at DEQ at their December meeting. So more to come on that topic area.
Eldon, are you talking about the new water supply plan?
Oh gosh, yes.
Okay. Last conversation I had, that's still an executive review, and nothing final has come out yet.
Well, we're going to hear officially from DEQ the commission meeting in December. And what you just said is why they're not on the meeting next week, and they're on the meeting in December.
Yeah. I'm hoping they come out with something soon, because I sure would like to know what our date's going to be to have this thing submitted.
And yeah, under the new regional rules.
You and everyone else, Norm.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny. I keep getting emails from people. What's going on? What's going on? And it's like, yeah, well, same place we were 3 years ago.
Never mind all the CBPA ordinances that we're supposed to have adopted by next June, right? July, something like that. That don't have draft guidance on.
Yeah, CBPA, new construction general permit. I mean, the list goes on. But for those of you who don't know, Ryan Green also left DEQ. He's now in CZM program. So there's been some significant turnover within the water supply planning division over there.
Okay, well, on that happy news, I hope everybody enjoys the rest of your day, and we'll see several of you next week. And Luke, I'll see you this afternoon. I guess we lost Luke already. All right. And thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Eldon.
Thanks, Eldon.
Thank you.
Hey, Harrison. Oh, you got too quick. Tommy, everything going well down there? You're on mute.
Yes, we're doing okay. I've got 3 months and change here left in office.
Counting them down, huh?
Yeah, but I'm still working on some things, what I'll be doing after after December. So
do me a favor, and next time you see Prue, tell her I said hello.
Oh, I will.
Okay.
Be happy to.
Yeah, miss her.
I do. Yeah, I see her about once a month.
Okay. Well, I appreciate that. I was having a conversation with Senator Stewart and Montcastle, Lisa Montcastle.
Leo, yeah, my next door neighbor.
Okay. That's where I was given the heads up what's coming next week. Because Richard Stewart is really concerned about the water withdrawals associated with the data centers.
Oh my gosh, yeah, the Countryside Alliance up here, or excuse me, Conservation Alliance in Essex County is.
Yeah.
Do you get would you be interested in the Essex County Conservation Alliance new